bought the Tesla K10s, I was not aware that virtualized GPU or vGPU support was not enabled on these particular cards. There are some more glaring problems with this type of setup, but I think we will get into that in the next video. Now, having all the required software and then getting all of that required software up and running are two very different conversations. Let's be honest, no one actually enjoys shaving. Sure, you like looking your best, but getting there can be a pain. Between the actual pain of shaving to the absurdly high cost of razors, who can blame anyone for going full mountain man? Luckily, Harry's is here to help on both fronts. With their own factory in Germany, they're able to deliver a close, comfortable shave with top quality razors at a fair price. So you can forget driving to the store and waiting for someone to unlock the cabinet, also you can spend $35 on 4 blades. Harry's will deliver razors straight to your door for as little as $2 each, with or without a subscription. Buying from Harry's, you'll also be supporting great causes, as 1% of their global sales are donated directly to nonprofit organizations to provide mental health care for men, veterans, and LGBTQ+ youth. Visit harrys.com/craftcomputing and get started with their trial set for only $3, which includes their rubber-handled razor, attached blade, blade cover, and their smooth foaming shave gel. That's harrys.com/craftcomputing to get your $3 trial set. And thanks again to Harry's for sponsoring today's video. Welcome back to Craft Computing, everyone. As always, I'm Jeff, and this is part 8 of my cloud gaming server project. And for once, I'm celebrating. Around me are all of the different graphics cards that I purchased for this project over the last couple of years, mainly because I wanted to show just how far this project has ballooned from its pretty modest beginnings. When this all started, I had some pretty simple goals in mind. I wanted to be able to have thin client access from a Raspberry Pi to a full desktop experience. That means playing Windows games at 1080p resolution and 60 frames per second, as well as access to full desktop applications, like video editing or even just a full-fledged web browser with GPU acceleration. I wanted the experience to be scalable across multiple virtual machines. I wasn't looking for just a one-off VM, as that kind of thing has been done before with single graphics cards. Rather, I wanted a single graphics card to be able to power multiple virtual machines. Also, I was looking at keeping costs to an absolute minimum, and we've since blown that one out of the water. First off, let's go through a quick refresher just in case you forgot what happened in the first 7 parts of this video series. Like me, because it's been about 6 months. I'm using a technology called NVIDIA vGPU, or Virtualized GPU. Now this is not to be confused with PCI Express pass-through, which is passing through a single GPU into a virtual machine. Rather, this is dividing a GPU's resources between multiple VM clients, while the host maintains full control of the graphics card. vGPU is a technology that's been reserved for either Tesla or Grid-branded NVIDIA graphics cards. vGPU drivers are downloaded in pairs, one for the host OS, in this case I'm using the KVM driver for Proxmox, and one for the client OS, which can be either a Windows or Linux virtual machine. In order to take advantage of the graphics acceleration inside of a virtual machine, you also need a client that's capable of displaying the full desktop experience. There are some game clients out there that can do this, like Steam Play or even NVIDIA's own game streaming. However, there are clients that can't do this, such as VNC or Microsoft's Remote Desktop. The best system I found for this is Parsec, which is a free application you can download from parsec.app. It allows for a full desktop experience and is compatible with NVIDIA's NVENC encoder, meaning you get low bandwidth, low latency, and high frame rate streams straight to any client that you'd like. Speaking of clients, they are available for nearly any system you can think of. Smartphones, macOS, Chrome OS, Raspberry Pi, Windows, Linux. I've played games on pretty much every client OS you can think of, with a great experience each and every time. Now obviously, all the graphics cards in front of me represent a number of failed attempts, shall we say that. Rather than rehashing all of them now, I'm just going to link you to the playlist right up here, so you can see the previous 7 videos and get an idea for all the graphics cards and their associated hardships. Rather, I'm going to try to summarize in a nice tidy paragraph right here. There's been a whole lot of failure with all of these GPUs, and very little promise of actually achieving my goal. That is having a 6 gamer, 1 CPU, but in a 100% headless LAN party in a box type setup. So, what's changed between now and my last couple of attempts? For starters, let's rewind to March of this year, where NVIDIA made a drastic policy change regarding virtualization of consumer graphics cards. While PCI Express pass-through has always been possible on the physical side of things, NVIDIA locked that feature down only for Quadro and Tesla-based GPUs. Any NVIDIA GeForce card that was passed through to a virtual machine had the drivers programmed to literally shut themselves off if any virtual hardware was detected. This meant that even if you own two different graphics cards, you couldn't stick them into the same machine and run two different systems simultaneously. The policy change immediately allowed for any Kepler or newer-based NVIDIA graphics card to be passed through to a virtual machine and work at full speed with full functionality enabled. While my GTX 690s were still kind of a bust, I was able to successfully pass through a GTX 1080 and a GTX 1650 to two simultaneous virtual machines inside the same system. Change number 2 came in the form of the community digging into NVIDIA's vGPU system. Just a couple weeks after NVIDIA fixed their Code 43 issues, the first version of the vGPU unlock script was released on GitHub. The script essentially allows consumer GeForce and Quadro cards to run as vGPU hosts on simultaneous virtual machines, something that's been previously reserved for only Tesla or Grid branded cards. But how does this work? I thought Tesla cards were some rare unobtainium with physically different hardware. Actually, there's very little difference physically between, say, a Tesla K10 and a GTX 690. The GPU cores in both are absolutely identical, being a GK104 GPU. The Tesla card simply has more memory with ECC support, more stable and validated drivers for specific workflows like compute and machine learning, and some additional features unlocked through firmware. Some generations of Tesla GPUs included tensor cores, while the GeForce cards went without that feature. However, as of NVIDIA Turing and Ampere GPUs, tensor is now included in the standard GeForce lineup. However, the function we're after today, vGPU, has never relied on exotic hardware like tensor cores. It was always 100% a software and driver-side function, which was only allowed to run on Tesla series cards. Which brings us to the vGPU unlock script. It detects which GeForce or Quadro card you have installed in your system, intercepts the PCID calls from the card to the OS, and responds instead with the ID of the Tesla variant. For this to work, you need to have a GeForce or Quadro card with the same physical GPU core as its Tesla equivalent. For example, the GTX 1070 Ti's I have in this system have a GP104 GPU core, which is identical to the Tesla P4. You then need the Tesla P4 NVIDIA Grid driver for your hypervisor, which is downloaded in a package along with the drivers for the client VM. To enable all features inside the client VM, you'll also need an associated NVIDIA Grid license, which does require you to run a licensed server and have a current subscription with NVIDIA. There is another method, though, to enable all functions with the exception of CUDA inside the VM, and that's actually what I've done here today. Just like you can intercept the device IDs and change them before they reach the host OS, you can also tell the client OS that the card being presented is not a vGPU card. Instead, it'll show up as a Quadro GPU. This has a couple distinct advantages. For starters, you will get DirectX, Vulkan, and OpenGL all available, as well as NVENC for hardware encoding of your streaming connection. Second, there's no licensing needed to pass through a Quadro card into a VM. A simple command changes the vGPU profile on each of my VMs from an NVIDIA P42Q into a 2GB Quadro P6000. Now, this is very clearly subverting NVIDIA licensing, so why am I okay with it, and why am I even showing you? Well, because NVIDIA already kind of let the cat out of the bag on this, just on a different platform. You see, back in March, NVIDIA wasn't just gracing us with a new feature by disabling their Code 43 lockout in GeForce cards. Instead, this was a decision made after working together with Microsoft on a new bit of software for Hyper-V called GPU-P, or GPU Paravirtualization. Essentially, GPU-P is Microsoft's version of vGPU and MXGPU from AMD, allowing you to share GPU power with virtual machines inside of a Hyper-V server. The best part? This system is 100% free to use, and if you have a Windows 10 license, you can actually use it right now, which is why we need to talk about the system under my desk before we talk about the system that's on top of it. While it's not nearly as impressive looking as my Epic server here, it is still rocking a Ryzen 3800X and an RTX 2080 running Windows 10 Pro, along with a Hyper-V server installed. On that server are 3 virtual machines, dynamically sharing the resources of that RTX 2080. If one of the machines is 3D rendering, it can have full access to the entirety of the 2080's power. However, if multiple VMs are in games, the power will be split equally between them. So, after my nearly 2-year-long journey, It turns out Microsoft and Hyper-V have pretty much solved all of my problems, being able to split a GPU between multiple virtual machines without the need for special licensing or hardware, just the GPU you already have installed in your system. And this whole thing is actually scalable. If you add more GPUs to the host, you can add more virtual machines to take advantage of that additional horsepower, so long as your host cards use identical drivers. Performance is rock solid as well. Here you can see me playing Crysis in a VM over Parsec, while two other virtual machines are going to town on Heaven benchmark. Crysis is running at 1080p max settings, and Heaven is running at 1080p high settings with moderate tessellation. Don't worry, I will be doing a full video tutorial on getting GPU-P up and running in the next week or so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that one. It'll let you share your gaming rig with other people, whether they live in your house or not, all without building them their own PCs. So, on the one hand, we have NVIDIA allowing Microsoft clients to have full benefits of vGPU functionality without any licensing costs or hoops to jump through. And on the other hand, we have all of our Linux-based hypervisors. But you'd better have more money than Corsair set aside if you want Tesla GPUs, your own licensing server, as well as hypervisors like ESXi and vSphere for configuring your own vGPU clients. Or you can run this vGPU unlock script and have full access to virtual GPUs on consumer hardware, like the 3 GTX 1070 Ti's I have installed in here right now. I'm not making this video so much as a middle finger to NVIDIA either. I'm simply trying to show that there are use cases for home users, consumers, and small businesses that could very much benefit from vGPU technology. Right now, I have a virtual machine running in one of my servers with a Quadro P1000 card passed through. This lets my video editor log in via Parsec and run Adobe Premiere as if you were sitting right in front of the PC with a full 4K desktop experience. It lets us collaborate on video projects as if we were sitting right next to each other, and also negates the need for us to transfer hundreds of gigabytes of files over the network from mine to his, because my files now no longer need to leave my own network. I've also used Parsec in the last year to stream games from my gaming PC to my GPD Win 1 handheld. And my daughter uses her Chromebook all the time at our in-laws' house to play Minecraft from her desktop PC. So what if we didn't actually need those desktop gaming PCs? Instead, we could build a single server, set it in another room, and just use the thin clients that we already have, like a phone, a Chromebook, or even a Raspberry Pi. So that's a lot of talk about how we got from there to here, but how does the system I built today actually run? Honestly, this has exceeded every expectation I have ever had for this project. In fact, I don't just have 6 gaming PCs on here, I split this up into 12 gaming PCs. That's right, I have 12 virtual machines running 1080p games at low settings, 60 frames per second, using only 3 1070 Ti graphics cards. How freaking crazy is that? Now, before I started filming this video, I wanted to run the system through a proper test, but in the 12 gamer configuration I have it in right now, I'm running into limitations that don't even involve the GPUs. I know, I'm as shocked as you are, right? My storage, for example, is a pair of 1.92 terabyte SATA SSDs in a ZFS mirror, giving me a 1 GB per second theoretical read speed. If all 12 virtual machines are trying to read data at the same time, I'm reduced down to speeds well below even modern spinning drives, and latency also shoots through the roof. Realistically, I would love to add some NVMe 4.0 storage to get enough performance to run 12 simultaneous virtual machine instances, and I think it is totally doable. However, I first need to swap out the EPYC 7601 for an EPYC Rome CPU with PCIe 4.0 support. Also, upgrading any of the storage at all is not doable with the GPUs in their current configuration. And by that I mean, the GPUs are currently covering the 3 8X slots that I have on this motherboard, meaning that if I want to expand the system anymore, I'm gonna have to water cool the graphics cards. Network speed is also a major concern as well. Not my local network speed, because even 1 gigabit is more than enough for 12 simultaneous game streams. I'm talking my internet upload if I want people to actually test this thing. I have a 50 megabit upload right now, which isn't half bad, but the average Parsec stream at 1080p 60 is about 8 megabit per second, meaning I can only stream about 5 clients before my ISP will give up the ghost. But don't worry, I'm actually considering co-locating this box to a gigabit upload so we can let her stretch her legs a little bit. So at this point, you're probably thinking to yourself, you've made it this far into the video, and I still haven't talked about the performance of the individual VMs. What gives? Well, let's put it this way. I have been able to run 11 unique instances of Heaven Benchmark and game on the 12th virtual machine over Parsec, to some pretty fantastic results. Crysis was able to play at 1080p medium details at a locked 60 frames per second. With this workload, the 3 GPUs saw around 90% utilization, with temps hovering around 80°C. This is with a 50% fan speed, meaning this entire rig is actually office-friendly with 12 virtual machines fully loaded and in-game. There's still a ton of testing left to do in game performance before I call this project a complete success. I also will likely run into memory limitations running the GPUs in a 12-way split, as each virtual machine is only left with about 2 GB of video memory. While that is plenty for older titles, modern games may struggle even at 1080p low settings. The beauty of vGPU though is I can dynamically shift the amount of memory available to each virtual machine. If I want to run 6 VMs with 4 GB each, that is also a completely valid configuration. It also remains to be seen if we'll see similar NVINC dropout issues like we did on the Tesla M60s, as we haven't really pushed the 1070 Ti's to their limit yet. But so far, video encoding has worked spectacularly well, even with the GPUs flirting with 100% utilization at times. This is obviously far from the last video I'm going to be making about this subject. I'm currently in the process of writing up full tutorials along with multiple configuration options for both Proxmox vGPU unlock as well as Hyper-V and GPU para-virtualization. I'll also be doing some hybrid setup videos as well, like how to share a single GPU from your workstation or gaming rig with additional virtual machines. Lots of really cool projects coming up on the channel, but I'm also open to suggestions as well. Let me know if you have any down in the comments below, and on your way down there, make sure to drop this video a like and subscribe to Craft Computing if you haven't done so already. Follow me on Twitter at Craft Computing to keep up with daily shenanigans like this, and if you like the content you see on this channel and want to help support me in buying more enterprise GPUs or something like that, make sure to look me up on Patreon or Floatplane. Links are also down in the video description. As a bonus, you'll get exclusive access to my Discord server, where you can chat with myself and the other hosts from Talking Heads. That's going to do it for me, my empty stomach, and this fantastic 11.5% Imperial Stout. Thank you all so much for watching this one, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys. Beer for today is from my I'm Letting It Age collection. This is the Santiam Pirate Stout, but this isn't just their normal Pirate Stout, which is a fantastic brew in its own right. This is their Pirate Stout Govna's Reserve Barrel-Aged Coconut Stout, and this has been barrel-aged in rum barrels. Not only that, this bottle is from 2017. It's not often I'll open something like this just for a video, but I feel like celebrating today. This is one of my favorite beers. I think this is the longest I've ever let one age as well. I had one bottle that I saved for about 3 years, but we're pushing 4 with this one. Super rich chocolate, rich, dark, bitter on the finish, sweet up front, roasty, but without, it's not a coffee roast. Let me be very clear about that. This is something dramatically different from your traditional barrel-aged Imperial Stout, which usually has some espresso or something like that. This is roasty in a whole different kind of way.